Hello everyone, John Day here. I hope you're well. I'm in my conservatory at the moment, which is a bit of a mess. I'm converting it into a studio for video and music recordings and productions. So apologies for the mess behind me at the moment. Anyway, I'm doing some training at the moment on Power Automate and Power Apps, and I'm really enjoying it. There's so much to it, but it's still a growing toddler. And there are some little features that could be made simpler for end users. And one in particular is using conditions to search for words in file names or files in OneDrive or OneDrive for Business. Where I'm showing these tips and tricks in the courses, it is consuming time from the content that I'm scheduled to cover. So I'm going to put these into video format so that everyone can refer to these as much as they wish. So, going to give you the lowdown on the dynamic content property we have for getting the file name from OneDrive for Business. I'm going to identify the limitations and show you how to get around it. And plus, I'm also going to do a little bit of how to work with searching for content. Bear in mind that Power Automate has a case-sensitive search facility, so I'm going to show you how to get around that. Okay, let's get my chunky headphones on, and the first thing I'm going to do is do a demonstration using a template that's going to take some files. These are my files, and they're specifically named for the demonstration, and I want to place those files into my OneDrive and specifically into a folder called John Day QA. There we go. So I'm going to drop them in there. I want my flow to take those files and move them into a SharePoint site and into a library called Knowledge Vault. Okay, let's build that flow. So I'm just going to go to the top here and click New and Create from Template. And there's a lot of templates in there now. So when you do look for templates in particular, the first thing to concentrate on is to search for the correct data connection. So I'm looking not just OneDrive, because don't forget there's a free OneDrive. I want to use the one that's in my OneDrive for Business. So make sure you are connecting to the right data connection, otherwise you end up having a flow looking in the wrong place for those files. And the next thing I want to do is I want to basically connect that to SharePoint. So usually just the data connections to search for first tends to narrow down quite quickly the choice of options you've got there. And then after that, I'm just going to put in some words like move file. And you can see just by putting in those keywords, it does make the searching for the template you want a lot easier. So I'm now going to click on that one, move file from OneDrive for Business to SharePoint, and notify me. I actually don't want the notification, but I can delete that. So the first thing I'll do is make sure that my flow can see those data connections that's used by my user account. Looks like they're all good. Click Continue. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that notification. Delete that. Don't need it. Okay, so let's have a look at what we've got. We've got a trigger at the top there that says when the file is created, and that's uploaded or new in my OneDrive. And in particular, I want to let it know that that file is not to be dropped in the root, but further into my John Day QA there. There we go. Superb. And then it's going to take that file and it's going to create that into SharePoint. It's not moving files. You can't move a file from one data connection to another. You have to create it. If you don't understand that, I can do another video on how content is done, and furthermore how you need different actions for the content and its metadata. You have to sort of bind them together. But for now, I'm just going to quickly click the drop down arrow and pick, there's my site data mod. If I actually want the John Day QA one, do I? Where am I going? Crazy. And then in particular, inside there, that should now pull up all of my libraries. And there they are. In fact, all of my libraries, even the ones that are not for users' benefit, but there's my knowledge one. And the rest of the content underneath it, you can see I've got this XMS file name. Just bring your attention to that XMS file name, because that's going to come very important later. And then it's going to take the content of my file, drop that inside this new file container, and then finally when it's finished it's going to delete the file. Okay, that's all ready to go. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to just use the back arrow to take this back to the start page of the flow. As you can see, it's brand new, no runs in there yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm now just going to go back to my OneDrive, and I'm going to take one of these files, and I'll take the Manage Teams user guide and drop that in. Okay, so all I've got to do now is go back to my Power Automate tab and click the refresh button here on the side just to wait for that to run the flow. Now, Microsoft do say there's a policy of up to 5 minutes on an enterprise license or an academic license, up to 5, no more than a maximum of 5 minutes that you'd normally have to wait for that run to appear. So let's see from now how many minutes it takes. Let's just keep clicking refresh until that appears. Yeah, no joy yet. No, still waiting. Right, okay, so it's done. The flow ran a minute ago. Let's have a look and see if it's happened. So I'm going to go into OneDrive, files gone, go into my SharePoint library, files arrived. Brilliant. Happened a few seconds ago. That's actually not true. If I go and refresh the page, that actually happened. Oh, it's now 2 minutes ago. Okay, good stuff. So it works. So the next stage is to only move the files that contain the word user guide. So what I'm hoping by the end of this is that I only get 3 of those files moved. So I've got 3 with the word user guide, 1 without. And that's the idea. I want it to move those 3 files but leave the other one behind. So I'm going to go back to the flow and I'm going to edit it. Okay, so what I want to do now is create in between that trigger and that first create file action. I'd like to insert a new action. And this is going to be a control type of action. So in particular, I want a condition there. Okay, so the condition is to see if the file name contains the words user guide, and then if it does, what I'd like to do is then only then, if it's true, is create the file in SharePoint and then delete it from the OneDrive for Business. So I've just dragged and dropped those files into the yes box. Great, all I've got to do now is set up the condition. So I'm going to click in there, and as you saw earlier, I had that file name, which I click on this one here. There it is, and I'm just going to hover over it, and you'll notice this one has XMS file name encoded, not XMS file name, XMS file name encoded, which is a bit kind of weird. Okay, I'm just going to carry on. So if that file name contains, and then I'm going to put in the words user guide. Now I could do it like that. So it's looking for it as user space guide. I could, if I wanted to get really clever, add the row and say if the file name contains user and the file name contains guide. It doesn't matter. I mean, that will just mean that if I put the words next to each other or if they're in different places, then that would still work. I actually want it to be the phrase user guide. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete the extra row and leave it as it was, user guide. Okay, brilliant. And if that's true, saves the file into SharePoint and then deletes it from the OneDrive. Okay, brilliant. So I'm going to save this flow and I'm going to go back to the start page and I'm going to try it again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete it from here. I'm going to do exactly the same file, delete it, and I'm going to use that exact same file that I did, which is the Manage Teams user guide, and just drop that back into OneDrive. Okay. Away we go. Just going to go back to my Power Automate and run that flow again. Just wait for it to run. Okay, so it's run. Yay, and it's successful. It says it succeeded, which means I go to OneDrive and find the files that are there. So, must clear this up. A little get a bit confused. The run succeeded. Didn't fail. And what it means by that is, if I click on the date for this run, all the actions successfully ran. It checked when a file was dropped in, it checked to see if the file contained the condition, and it said it didn't. So it successfully went down the yes side and said, well, I'm not going to run those. It went down the no side instead, but because there's nothing in there, nothing to run. So it successfully succeeded. But yet it didn't move the file, even though it contains the words user guide. So the file I was looking for was called Manage Teams user guide, okay, .docx. Now, it said in that field encoded. Now, if it was like an encoded as we see in URLs, where you have that with the %20, that means it doesn't like spaces, so it turns it into like a hexadecimal code 20. That I could manage, I could deal with that because it would still work. But that's not actually what the encoded is in Flow. That is the encoded file name. And it's got no user guide in that whatsoever. So the problem is it's looking for that field, and I need to find a way of grabbing that one. So I have to take that field name this is encoded and replace it with one that doesn't have encoded, like I saw in the original template. In fact, like I saw here. So I'm going to get rid of that. The shame of it is there is no unencoded copy in here. How do I get it? So if I go to the expression, what I would like to be able to do is grab that field, place it in there, and then remove the dash encoded bit. Only problem is I'm in the expression, I've clicked in it, and when I click back on the dynamic content, I can't even put it in there. So there's a little trick I want to show you, and it simply is when you go to the expression tab, click inside the expression box, press the space bar once, and that triggers it to say I'm building an expression. So now when I go back to the dynamic content, I can scroll down, select the file name, and it places it into the expression as I want to use it. Great. I just want to get rid of that space now that I put in there. So I'm just going to remove that space. Now I can move to the right hand side of this and remove that dash encoded word. That's it. If I click OK, job done. Now it's because it is a modified expression, it comes up like a magenta or a pink color. That will fix itself later. Don't worry about that. It's just reminding me that I've modified that myself manually. So I'm going to save this flow. Great. I'm going to go back to the start page of this flow, and I want to, I've got to wait another X amount of minutes to start that file. Actually, no, I don't. See, the great thing about it is that flow did succeed, but it didn't move the file. And I went in there and edited the reason why it didn't work. But what I can do with a flow is I can actually, where it's possible, is I can then run this test button in the top right corner here. What it allows me to do is allow me to rerun using a previous run. So I'm actually going to say go and trigger the run that I did 7 minutes ago. I'll click test, and that will actually go and pick up that file in OneDrive, but it runs it immediately. I've got to wait for X amount of minutes, up to a maximum of 5. It's run. If I go to OneDrive now, there it is, it's gone. There it is, it's gone. And if I go to SharePoint, there it is, it's arrived. So it has now worked. It's now taken that user guide word, looked for the actual file name, not the encoded one, and moved the file. Now, every time a run is listed in this list, I can click the date, as you saw earlier, but I can also expand each trigger and each action and look at the outputs. And just to show, that was the actual file name that the action was looking for, and that was the one that was causing the problem because I have no user guide word in there. So that's why I changed it. I sort of tweaked the field and got rid of the dash encoded, and that allowed me to look for the file name that I see. Okay, so what that means is with all 4 of these files, the first 3 should be moved because they all contain the word user guide, and the bottom one should stay in my OneDrive location. So let's try that out. Let's go and have a look. So I'm going to take all of those files, I'm going to drop them all in at the same time. So that'd be one flow run per file. So back to my flow start page, and I'm going to oh, look at that. So it's not always that bad. Look at that, that ran within seconds. I'm not kidding, that ran straight away. So okay, let's have a look in OneDrive. Oh, hello. Well, the intro to Microsoft Forms is still there because it hasn't got the user guide, but these 2 are still sitting there. Hang on, which one's moved then? Well, it's the same one that I had before. The Managed Teams user guide has moved. Why didn't those other 2 files move? So these are the 4 files that I was attempting in the flow. I was expecting the first 3 to work, but only the first one worked. The reason for this is because the criteria in flow is case sensitive. The first one worked because it matches the uppercase G and U in user guide. The second file has a lowercase g. The third one has got a lowercase u and g, so therefore they didn't match. I need to find a way of getting it to look for the text but not the casing of the text. The best way to do this is to take those file names, just tweak them, borrow them, and convert them to either uppercase or lowercase. So I'm going to convert mine to a lowercase format, and that way my criteria will be matched in that same casing. Now, I'm not permanently changing the file names in any way. I'm just extracting the file names and then converting them to lowercase, and that will then bring back the correct results I'm looking for. So let's go and edit this flow again, and I need to expand the condition, and I'm going to focus on, first of all, this MS file name. I'm going to remove it. I'm going to write it all again so you can see it nice and cleanly built. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to build the expression again, but I need to convert that field to lowercase. Now, if you know Excel, you might be aware of certain functions. It's worth having a look for those functions because some of them have very similar names. So you can see that where I'm looking for the lower function in Excel is actually called toLower in here. So I'm going to select that one. It's good. Now, if you can't find the function you're looking for, there's a whole range of function names, and I'll put a link to all of the expressional functions into the video so you can see that. Now, these are like Excel functions, and that means that I need to place all of the arguments, all the information the function needs to do its job inside brackets. So when I do that, the brackets pop up and it automatically puts a sort of a text box on screen to give me the information I need to make this work. So I need to just basically put in the text that I'm converting to lower. I'm going to get rid of that pop-up. You'll see it automatically puts the closed bracket in for you. So all I've got to do now is either type, or I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go back to the dynamic content, find that file name, push it in there, and then like I did before, I'm going to go to the end and get rid of the dash encoded. I don't want the encoded file name, I want the regular file name. Click OK. Okay, and the last thing I have to do is take the value that I'm looking for and make sure that is in the matching lowercase. Okay, so that's job done. I'm now going to save my flow, and I'm not going to do all the testing and the rerun. I'm going to do this properly. I want to make sure that those have got a fresh set of files in there, and I want to make sure this actually runs properly. So I'm going to go into my OneDrive and I'm going to drop those files in. There they are. I'll just drop them in. Okay, and then wait for them to go into flow, and then wait for flow to run and see if those actually work. Now, through the power of video, you don't have to wait for that. I do though. Okay, so those files have run again. Just going to confirm they've run. Going to go to my OneDrive. 3 files have gone, 1 stayed behind. Go to the SharePoint. They're the 3 files that contain user guide, whether they are uppercase or lowercase. Whew, great. Now I'm just going to look at the all runs, because as I say, if I did this demonstrating training, this is worst case scenario, 50 minutes. I think the longest it's taken me to do that one demo. So I hope you've had some information out of this. I hope you've got some good tips and tricks. And again, I encourage you to come to my channel and come to Facebook, come to LinkedIn, come to Twitter, ask me questions, ask me if there's any videos that you'd like me to do. I will put them in there for you. I'll do my very, very best. Otherwise, as I say, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's been worthwhile watching. Stay safe and have fun.